Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to unpack one single idea that I promise will totally change how you see everything from global politics to street protests. And that idea is the political repertoire.
All right, let's dive right in by looking at two events in history. They're separated by nearly 150 years, but on the surface, they look remarkably similar. Both involve Russia, and both are about redrawing the map of Europe, but how they were handled? Completely different worlds.
I mean, just look at this. Back in 1878, after Russia won a war against the Ottoman Empire, the big world powers got together for a congress. They literally sat around a table and hammered out a new deal. Now, jump ahead to 2014. When Russia annexed Crimea, the reaction was from a totally different playbook. Suspension from the G8, UN resolutions, and these huge economic sanctions.
So get this, it's the same fundamental problem, a major power grabbing territory. But the set of moves, the entire playbook, is just completely different. And that raises a massive question. Why? Why do the tools and tactics of international politics change so dramatically? Well, the answer, it turns out, is this really cool concept from sociology called a repertoire. It's a powerful way to understand why political actors, whether they're presidents or protesters, do the things they do, and why those actions tend to look so familiar over time. The sociologist Charles Tilly, he's the one who really nailed this down. He called it a limited set of routines. And the keywords you really got to grab onto here are learned and shared. This is huge. These aren't just random spur-of-the-moment actions. They're established moves that everybody involved already understands. So here's the big takeaway. You've got to think of these repertoires as like shared scripts. It's not just about what political actors do. It's about what they know how to do. And, just as important, what everyone else expects them to do. So when a country slaps on sanctions or a protest group organizes a march, they're pulling a familiar play from a playbook everyone recognizes. Okay, so what does that actually look like? Well, think about it like this. It's kind of like a jazz band that knows all the same standards so they can just show up and jam. Or a Shakespearean actor who has a whole collection of famous roles ready to go. Or even a mechanic who has a specific set of tools for specific jobs. Political actors are the same way. They're drawing from a familiar toolkit to get things done. All right, so let's break this down a little more. What actually makes up one of these political plays? Because it's a lot more than just a simple list of options. Each action has some really key characteristics. First off, these actions are performative. They're always done for an audience, hoping to get a specific reaction. Second, they're strategic. You don't just pick one at random, you choose the right play from the toolkit for that exact situation. And third, they're improvisational. You know, the script isn't set in stone. Just like that jazz band might fuse two different styles, political actors can combine old tactics in new and really surprising ways. And look, this isn't just some abstract academic idea. You can see these playbooks in action literally everywhere, all across the landscape of world politics. They shape everything from how wars are fought to how deals are made. Let's start with a really grim example, civil wars. The idea of repertoires actually helps us understand why different armed groups often use a similar horrifying set of tactics, like kidnappings or massacres. These are rarely random acts of cruelty. They are often learned and repeated scripts of violence, deliberate moves to achieve a political end. Then you have what's called repertoires of repression. When they're facing protests, authoritarian governments often reach for the exact same toolkit. You know the drill: mass arrests, shutting down the internet, cracking down on activists. These are well-established plays, all designed to maintain control. And then, on the complete other end of the spectrum, you've got the repertoires of diplomacy. Things like calling for a UN resolution, holding a big conference, or putting out a joint statement. Those are all standard moves, right? They're part of a well-understood diplomatic playbook that countries use to manage their relationships. Okay, so why are we digging into this so much? Why does this whole idea of a repertoires actually matter? Well, because it gives us a much richer, more sophisticated way to understand how politics really works and how real political change happens. For starters, it shows us that political moves are almost never just pure, cold calculation, and they're not just mindless habits either. They're usually somewhere in between. It also helps explain how change doesn't always have to be this one big, dramatic revolution. A lot of the time, it happens slowly, as old plays in the playbook get tweaked and new ones get invented and added to the mix. Now, this concept is powerful, but it also opens up a whole can of worms. Some really big questions we don't have all the answers to yet. Like, where do these playbooks even come from in the first place? Are they shaped by powerful speeches, a group's identity, or the social networks that connect people?
And you gotta wonder, how do they actually change over time? Why is it that some repertoires, like the public protest, seem so flexible and pop up all over the world, while others are incredibly rigid and just stuck in one time and place? And this might be the biggest question of all. At the end of the day, do these shared scripts mostly help the people already in power just maintain the status quo? Or can they actually be a tool for challengers to completely shake things up and upend the whole system? It's a huge debate. Okay, let's circle all the way back to where we started, with that puzzle about Russia in 1878 versus 2014. What does this idea of repertoires tell us about the playbook of world politics today? So, you remember that modern playbook, the liberal repertoire, with sanctions and international law? Well, that's exactly what was used against Russia in 2014. And the hard truth? It really hasn't reversed the annexation of Crimea. The new playbook just isn't getting the same results as the old one did. And this leads to a really interesting paradox when you think about it. Today's diplomatic playbook seems to be more accessible. More countries and groups can use it. But at the same time, it also seems to be less powerful, less effective at actually stopping major powers from doing what they want. And that leaves us with one last, kind of provocative thought to chew on. The script for how international politics is supposed to work is now known all around the world. But what happens to the global order when following that script becomes more of a choice than a necessity? That's definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining us.